Part 2 of the early consequences. I wonder why there's holes in the gas tanks. While driving away, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The betrayal had cut deep, and I struggled to process everything. As I reached a safe distance, my thoughts turned to practical matters, specifically the future of my company. I called Gil, a trusted colleague, to discuss the company's uncertain future. I'm afraid Honor Energy might not continue, I explained, my voice heavy with regret. Gil had questions, naturally, but he understood the gravity of the situation when I mentioned my impending departure from the company. I promised to compensate him for his recent work in China and hinted at possibly collaborating in future ventures. Driving past my street, I saw my sister's car turning the corner. The sight confirmed my suspicions about my family's knowledge of the situation. A volunteer fire truck, donated by Honor Energy, sped past me, a bitter reminder of my contributions to the town I now felt alienated from. Upon reaching the warehouse, I bypassed the usual pleasantries and headed straight to my office. Jill, our administrative assistant, looked concerned. No interruptions, I instructed firmly, needing space to think and plan. Alone in my office, I focused on handling my financial affairs. I had offshore accounts for international business dealings, which also served as a tax haven. Deciding to consolidate my resources, I transferred funds into a separate account under Honor BB LLC. Then, I reached out to our two largest customers, explaining that we would be unable to fulfill their projects due to my personal decision to step down. I spoke directly with the CEOs, navigating their initial frustration and assuring them of a full refund. These decisions, made in the wake of personal turmoil, marked a significant turning point, both in my professional life and personal journey. Roger Hammond from Hammond's Luxury Homes was understandably upset about the potential disruption to his project. He's been one of my earliest clients and over time, had become a friend. In our conversation, I offered to supply him with the unique materials he needed from us, plus a 10% additional supply for contingencies. I also promised to personally oversee the transfer of designs and knowledge to another company of his choosing. Honor, you're talking to me here, Roger said, his voice tinged with disbelief. This isn't like you. You don't just walk away from commitments. With a heavy heart, I admitted, I can't continue working here. It's due to personal reasons. Roger was incredulous. Personal reasons. You're too skilled to let anything trivial derail your business. I couldn't help but laugh, albeit bitterly. Trivial. I found out my most trusted colleague is involved with my wife. He was shocked. Beth, that can't be right. She adores you. Are you sure you're not being misled? I replied with heavy sarcasm. Oh, absolutely. Why would I trust what I saw with my own eyes? I only caught them in the act in my living room. And surely, my family wouldn't cover up for her. Maybe I'm just imagining things. Thanks for the reality check, Roger. There was a pause on the line. I'm truly sorry, Honor, Roger finally said. I can't believe it. But know this, I'm here for you. Not just as a polite offer, but seriously. Call me anytime, for anything. You might need someone to talk to, someone outside your town. I appreciate that, Roger, I replied, feeling a bit lighter. You've always been more than a customer, you're a good friend. Sorry for unloading all this on you. Forget about the business, he insisted. Focus on sorting things out. Just promise me you'll reach out. Maybe come by for a visit. His sincere offer of support in a time of personal crisis was a small comfort in the chaos of my life. Overwhelmed with emotion, I realized how much Roger's support meant, especially considering the betrayal by those closest to me. Thanks, Roger. I've got a lot to sort out before dealing with legal matters. I'll be in touch, I said, my voice heavy with the weight of everything. Roger's response was empathetic. Take care, and don't hesitate to call me anytime. Next, I called our company attorney. It took some effort to get him on the line, but I urgently explained what I needed, sidestepping his inquiries. Initially hesitant, he finally agreed to my request. I emphasized the urgency, promising an additional incentive for timely completion. He committed to meeting the tight deadline. Having handled the necessary tasks, I left my office. Jill, our admin, appeared to be just finishing a phone call. Any calls for me? I inquired. She shook her head, visibly uneasy. Okay, arrange a company-wide meeting in the warehouse tomorrow at 11 a.m. Everyone needs to be there, regardless of their shift. Absentees will be dismissed, I instructed firmly. Jill, looking shocked, simply nodded. I left the office, turned off my cell phone, and drove out of town, needing some space and time alone. I checked into a hotel, ordered room service, and spent the evening reflecting on my life's sudden turn. That night, sleep was elusive, my mind haunted by the betrayal. I envisioned my family and friends, all involved in this deceit, and it felt like they were mocking me. It was a vivid nightmare, a surreal representation of my distress. In the cold light of morning, I prepared for the company meeting, determined to face the situation head-on, but unsure of what the future held for me. Feeling unwell, I skipped breakfast but managed to accomplish a few tasks, which brought a small sense of achievement. Riding my new Harley Road Glide Ultra to the office at 11:05, I couldn't help but think of it as a premature midlife crisis indulgence. It was the first time in a long time I had treated myself, and it felt right. especially considering the turmoil in my life. As I parked on the sidewalk and removed my helmet, I noticed Fred and my mother waiting for me. Their expressions changed to surprise upon seeing me. My mother moved towards me, but I raised a hand to halt her. "Not now. We'll talk later." She stopped, looking shocked. Fred attempted to follow me, but I stopped him firmly. "I'm not in the mood for conversation, Fred." He tried to caution me. "Honor, think this through." Without thinking, I reacted with a punch, letting out some of my pent-up frustration. "I warned you, Fred." Not a word. I continued to the warehouse, ignoring the greetings from my employees, and stepped onto the platform. The room fell silent. Though there was a microphone, I didn't feel the need for it with the small crowd of about 50 people. Scanning the room, I recognized every face. I had personally interviewed and hired each of them. Turning to Jill, I quietly instructed, "Aaron and Misty are dismissed. Give them 2 weeks severance and an additional week for each year they've been with us." Jill looked shocked but nodded in acknowledgement. Addressing the crowd, I raised my voice. "Does anyone here not know why I'm here, given what happened last night?" The question hung in the air, a heavy silence enveloping the room. The room was filled with a buzz of low conversation as I posed my question. About 10 people, unsure of the situation, raised their hands. I directed them to one side. "Please move over there. My admin will update you after this meeting." Jill, my admin, nodded and began to guide them aside. Once the group was separated, I addressed the remaining employees. "I've always tried to treat everyone here with respect, almost like friends. Now, I have a straightforward question and I expect honesty. Who among you had any idea about the situation with my wife?" Uncle Jack, a longtime employee and the floor manager, stepped forward. "Are you going to fire anyone who knew?" I shook my head. "No, there will be no more firings. I just want some honesty. Can't there be some integrity left here?" Uncle Jack moved closer, his voice low. "Most of us suspected something, but nothing concrete. We didn't want to hurt you. You've done a lot for us. We hoped she'd come around, without causing trouble for your marriage. Let's discuss this privately." Ignoring his suggestion, I asked again, who suspected or knew? Reluctantly, almost everyone eventually raised their hands. It started with just a few, including Uncle Jack, and then more joined in. The majority of the room, about 90%, had their hands up, acknowledging their awareness. Even Jill and Annie Marshall, now Annie Lane, raised their hands. Few could meet my gaze. The sight of so many hands was a stark revelation of the pervasive knowledge about my personal life within my own company. It was a bitter pill to swallow, seeing how widespread the awareness was, yet how little had been said to me. "Thank you for being honest, though I wish the circumstances were different. Maybe if someone had spoken up sooner, things could have been resolved differently. As it stands, I find it impossible to continue working with those I perceive as disloyal and untrustworthy." Uncle Jack, my mother's brother who had been a pillar of support, spoke up, his voice betraying his concern. "You said no one would be fired." "That's true. I'm a man of my word," I replied. "I've decided to step down. Beth will take ownership of the business. There's enough in the accounts to keep things running for 4 to 6 months. Fred will be taking over. I wish you all the best." The room erupted into chatter, but I wasn't done. My emotions got the better of me. "Actually, let me be honest. I'm deeply disappointed in all of you. If even one person had stood up and supported me, things could have been different. I hope you understand the consequences of your choices. I have no more to say to you." The room fell into a stunned silence. I addressed Uncle Jack, "Come to my office," and then to Jill, "Find Fred and send him in. If he's not there in 10 minutes, Bill will be promoted." In my office, Uncle Jack began to speak, but I cut him off. "This isn't a personal discussion, Uncle Jack. This is strictly business. Anything else can wait." He asked quietly, "What about after?" "Maybe. There are other things I need to handle now." "Don't ask." He nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation and the clear separation I had drawn between our personal relationship and the professional realities we were now facing. Fred arrived shortly, looking a bit worse for wear with a swollen lip and tissue in his nostril. Despite the circumstances, I had to restrain a smirk. "Sit down," I commanded. He tried to explain. "Honor, it wasn't." "Enough, Fred. Just sit. We're not discussing that now." He complied, taking a seat. "I'm leaving the company today," I began. "From now on, Fred, you'll be running things unless Beth decides otherwise. She's taking over the ownership." Fred's expression was one of complete shock. "The financial responsibilities will be Beth's domain. She's familiar with the business and will handle the accounts. Fred, your role will encompass the daily operations, sales, and marketing. Jack, you're still managing the floor. There are crucial changes you both need to know." They listened attentively. "As of 6 weeks from yesterday, Honor Energy will lose the rights to use the conversion controller assembly. We've sold the patent and the firmware rights. You'll need to find a new solution." Uncle Jack was visibly taken aback. "But that's the core of our operation." "That's no longer my concern," I stated firmly. "You cannot produce them beyond the 6-week mark. My advice? Maximize production now, even if it means working round the clock and paying extra for materials. After that, it's up to you to find a replacement. Good luck figuring it out." Their faces showed a mix of disbelief and concern, but my decision was final. I had made my choices and it was time for them to make theirs. Uncle Jack was already contemplating the next steps as I outlined the changes. Carlisle is no longer a client. Cease any production for them immediately. As for Hammonds, we will supply them with the materials I've committed to. I handed a printout to Uncle Jack, detailing the inventory that needed to be delivered to Roger Hammond within 3 business days. I'll handle it personally, Uncle Jack asserted. Good, I responded, then turned my attention to Fred. Here are all the necessary passwords, account details, and keys. I handed him a sealed envelope. Beth and I will finalize the transfer of the business. She already has access to most accounts. I just need to remove my name and grant her limited power of attorney. The company has sufficient funds to continue operations. The future challenges are yours now. Without waiting for a response, I left the office, ignoring Uncle Jack's attempt to shake hands and Fred's lingering questions. Mounting my Harley, I rode towards what used to be my home. The scene was one of devastation, the remains of Fred's and Dale's cars, the garage almost completely destroyed, and Beth's Volvo crushed under debris. The house had sustained significant damage, but the fire hadn't consumed the entire structure. Workers were busy patching up the damaged areas. Inside, the house was eerily quiet, no police tape or signs of investigation. I wandered through the rooms, but nothing seemed worth taking except for a few photographs of my children. Regretting my earlier decision to discard my phone, I stopped at Martinson's for a temporary replacement and called my mother. Honor, where are you? We need to talk, she answered, her voice filled with urgency. I'll be at your place by 7, I said to my mother. Make sure Beth is there too. Her voice was anxious. You'll actually talk. This isn't about revenge or anything. We'll talk, and have her kids there as well, I added. They're with me now, she replied. They miss you a lot. They're confused about why they can't go home or see you. I'll see them at 7, I said, and ended the call. Next, I headed back to the Harley dealership. They had just finished installing tie-downs on my truck and demonstrated how to use the motorcycle ramp. I loaded the bike onto the truck and then drove to a store, ignoring the murmurs and stares of people around me. When I returned to the office, the paperwork I had been waiting for was already delivered. Jill handed it to me hesitantly. Anything else I can do for you, Mr. Nolan? She asked. I replied coldly, No, Jill. I thought you would have been more loyal. It's disappointing. Her eyes welled up with tears. I thought it was for the best, trying to protect your marriage. We even tried to talk to Beth. I understand, but you should have come to me, I said, feeling the sting of betrayal. It's a lesson learned. I won't expect loyalty again. As Jill cried quietly, I left the office with the papers, feeling a mix of emotions. Stopping at the diner, I decided to eat there, not expecting or wanting to eat at my mother's house. I was going there for closure, prepared to hear their excuses and apologies, but my mind was already made up. My cousin Emma, who worked at the diner, served me an open-faced roast beef sandwich with fries. She then sat down across from me, her expression filled with concern. You should consider forgiving her, Honor. It's not the end of the world. Everyone knows how much you love each other. I tried to dismiss the conversation. Emma, I'm eating. I don't want to talk about this. But she persisted. We're family, Honor. You both need to work through this. I put down my fork and knife, feeling the weight of her words. No, Emma, I don't have to work through anything. I've got a broken marriage, doubts about my children's paternity, betrayal from my own family, and friends who sided with her. I have no family left. Now, either leave me to eat, or I'll leave. She stood up, visibly upset. You are family, Honor. That doesn't change. I didn't respond, focusing instead on my meal. Then, another relative approached my table, Uncle Jimmy. Honor, he greeted me. Uncle Jimmy, I acknowledged, taking another bite of my fry. He appeared uneasy. I'm sorry, Honor. I should have told you what little I knew. Curiosity piqued, I looked up at him. And what exactly did you know? Uncle Jimmy's revelation was straightforward. Beth's behavior with Fred started becoming inappropriate about 3 months ago, especially at social gatherings. When you were away on your West Coast trip, rumors circulated that she spent a lot of that time with him at your house. It was all talk, but it seemed credible. He sighed, expressing regret. I didn't understand how both you and his wife were kept in the dark. Everyone expected this would blow over, but it just got worse. He continued, when you were in China, their behavior was blatant. Fred hardly came to work, and they were seen dining out together, openly affectionate. Jean, who's not from around here and doesn't share the same loyalties as the townsfolk, was appalled when I shared my suspicions. Uncle Jimmy looked up, tears in his eyes. I feel ashamed, Honor. You've been more than fair to me, offering me a job when I needed it and promoting me despite my lack of formal education. I acknowledged his work ethic. You've been an excellent worker, Uncle Jimmy. I've never had an issue with your performance. He shook his head, understanding the unspoken part of my statement. But I failed you on a personal level. I should have stood up for you. Your secretary didn't clue you in, and now I don't know how to face my son about his college funding, knowing I didn't uphold any honor. Don't worry about Stephen, I reassured him. His scholarship stands. It's fully funded, and he'll finish his degree. He's not to blame for this. Uncle Jimmy wiped his eyes, overcome. Thank you, Honor. I'm deeply sorry I didn't do the right thing. You deserve better. I nodded. Thank you, Uncle Jimmy, I said, meaning every word. Despite the hurt and betrayal, I recognized the sincerity in his apology. Uncle Jimmy stood up but hesitated for a moment before speaking. Honor, I've known you your whole life. You've always been honest, never one to lie. What you said to Emma. Don't start lying now, especially not to yourself. Beth loves you. Whatever led to this situation, it wasn't because she didn't love you. His words hit me hard, but I responded with a cold glare. Is it all? He nodded solemnly. I'm sorry to disturb your meal. I hope you can forgive me someday. And I hope even more that you'll find a way to forgive her, for your own peace of mind. The fries in front of me suddenly lost their appeal. Leaving the diner and arriving at my mother's house was harder than I thought it would be. Her betrayal, in covering for Beth, felt like a deeper wound. We had always been so close, yet she chose to keep this from me. I stood at the door, questioning whether family bonds still held any meaning for me. I rang the doorbell, feeling like an outsider. Mom opened the door after a moment. Why'd you ring? She asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. I came to talk, I said, not moving until she invited me in. She looked at me with sadness. You don't need an invitation. This is still your home. It doesn't feel like it. Not anymore, I replied, the hurt evident in my voice. Her expression turned to one of frustration. Well, are you coming in, or not? I hesitated, then decided against it. Maybe another time, I said and walked away, leaving the unresolved issues for another day. The complexity of family ties and betrayal was too much to unravel in a single conversation. Upon entering the house, my daughter Marie rushed towards me with the innocent joy only a child can possess. I lifted her into my arms, hugging her tightly. Billy, still mastering the art of walking, approached with a mix of toddles and crawls. I picked him up, holding them both close, cherishing their presence, and silently hoping they were indeed my children. Daddy. Marie's voice was full of excitement. Mommy said, you'll have to fix it. Her words echoed the role I had always played in our family, the fixer. But this time, I wasn't sure if this was something I could, or even wanted to, fix. The thought of leaving crossed my mind, but it vanished as I looked at my children. I'll see what I can do, precious, I replied softly. She planted a kiss on my cheek. When can we go home? Very soon. I have a few things to sort out, but you, Billy, and Mommy can return home soon. She urged, you too, Daddy. No more travel. I didn't respond, unable to make any promises. I gently set them down, noticing Beth standing nearby, her expression anxious. As she approached, I raised my hand, signaling her to stop. You wanted to talk, I'll listen. But that's all I'm willing to do right now. My mother chimed in, trying to ease the tension. Let's have dinner. I made my roast. I already ate, I stated, not interested in the implied peace offering. Peggy, peeking from the kitchen, looked surprised. Nobody told him about dinner. Embarrassed, my mother suggested, let's move to the living room. Peggy, can you take care of the kids' dinner? As we relocated to the living room, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension and unresolved issues. My sister Peggy, with a sigh that hinted at her feeling underappreciated, agreed to take care of the children's meal. Sure, why not? It's not as if I'm considered family. I settled into an armchair, while Beth and my mother sat together on the couch. Pulling out the folded papers from my pocket, I placed them beside me. Go ahead, I'm listening, I said, my tone neutral. Beth looked uncertainly at our mother, who gave her a reassuring nod. I suspected they had discussed this beforehand. I have no excuses, Honor, Beth started. What I did was foolish, and I regret it deeply. You have to believe me when I say I love you, Fred and Dale. They mean nothing to me. This has been tearing me apart. I remained silent, my expression unchanged, as I waited for her to continue. It happened 3 times, she confessed. The last time was a mistake, and I had intended to end it. I don't know why I didn't stop it sooner. The first was during your trip to California, and the second, more recently. I didn't want you to go on that trip. I even asked you to send someone else. I asked calmly, is that all? Beth seemed to struggle for words, her gaze shifting nervously. He was always there, always pressing. He told me lies about you, but I never believed them. I don't know why I gave in. I was lonely, missing you, and he was there. And listened quietly. What are you going to do? She asked, her voice tinged with desperation. I promise, nothing like this will ever happen again. I'll do everything to make this right. We can get past this, can't we? I love you, and I know you love me. Her words hung in the air, a mix of regret and pleading, as I weighed the enormity of what she had said and the impact it had on our family. With a shrug, I tried to convey indifference. I'll be all right eventually. As for you, I'm not sure. There's one thing I need to know, are the kids mine? Beth looked at me, shocked and hurt. Of course, they're yours. How can you even question that? I'll need DNA confirmation. Arrange for the tests this week, I said firmly. Then I turned to my mother. What about you? What do you have to say for yourself? She seemed taken aback. I just wanted to help you both work through this. I thought maybe you could forgive each other. Forgive each other. I repeated incredulously. And what exactly is she forgiving me for? You weren't there for her, Mom said. In the house. What happened there? You should have talked to her, not just walked away. I pressed her. How long did you know about Beth's affair? Mom looked uncomfortable. I wasn't covering for her. I was trying to help fix things. I insisted. How long, Mom? It doesn't matter now, she deflected. It's in the past. She won't do it again. Frustrated, I raised my voice. How long, Mom? She countered. If you can't speak respectfully, you should leave. Ignoring her, I tossed the papers towards Beth. Sign these. No alterations. I'll let you know where to send them. With that, I left, unable to stay in that house a moment longer. The conversation had only deepened the chasm of betrayal and misunderstanding. Confronting my mother with a mix of pain and anger, I said, what you did is unforgivable. You betrayed your own son for someone who wasn't loyal to me. I can't overlook that. For Dad's sake, I'll keep sending you the monthly support, but that's it. I want no further contact. As I turned to leave, Mom shouted, you can't just walk out. We're not finished. I am, I replied, my voice heavy with finality. Do what you have to with the papers. Don't try to contact me. Behind me, I could hear Beth crying, Mom yelling, and the sound of the kids' confusion and distress. Peggy hurried after me, imploring, Honor, don't go like this. You promised to listen. I heard enough, I said, continuing to walk. Beth's confession, Mom's evasiveness. It's all clear now. And you, Peggy, how long have you known? She answered without hesitation, from the beginning. We tried to stop her, to make her see sense. Reaching my truck, I was ready to leave it all behind, but Peggy climbed into the passenger seat. Peg, get out. I don't need this. You chose her side, stay with her. She was adamant. We were trying to protect you. We didn't think telling you would help. Honestly, Honor, you're not the easiest person to approach. We care about you, but you can be really difficult. Out of my truck, Peggy. I don't need your justification. I'm done with all of you. She refused to budge. You've heard everyone else. Now it's my turn to speak. As I drove, Peggy's frustration was palpable. You're too rigid, Honor. You never compromise. You think your high standards are a virtue, but they push people away. You're respected and trusted, yes, but also feared. I scoffed at her accusation. Feared? That's absurd. You remember Cousin Robbie. You fired him for smoking pot at work, she reminded me. It was a clear breach of policy, I retorted. I can't condone illegal activities at work, family or not. But he's family. A warning could have sufficed, Peggy argued. I treated him fairly, gave him severance, offered help. What more should I have done? I replied, feeling my decision was justified. And what about Trey and Lisa? You didn't fire them, but you punished them harshly for their personal issues. That was different, I said. I set clear boundaries to maintain professionalism at work. They knew the consequences. Peggy shook her head. Your black and white view of the world doesn't leave room for gray areas, Honor. People make mistakes. They're human. You expect perfection, and it's unrealistic. I drove in silence, contemplating her words. Peggy's perspective, although harsh, offered a different lens through which to view my actions and their impact on those around me. I had to take action, I explained, trying to justify my decision regarding Trey and Lisa. A workplace romance, especially between a supervisor and a subordinate, could lead to legal issues for the company. Peggy countered, you could have handled it differently. A private warning, advising them to keep their personal lives separate from work, might have sufficed. I didn't publicize it, I defended myself. I didn't tell anyone. But giving them unpaid leave was a clear message. They shouldn't have been involved at work, sure. But you didn't have to go to such extremes, she argued. And now you're labeling everyone who doesn't agree with you as cheaters, even Beth. You think I'm too harsh, I said. That I should have been more lenient, more family-like. Yes, Peggy said. You always play the judge. That's why nobody confided in you about Beth. They fear you. You're more a boss than family. Beth, on the other hand, is involved in caring. She's more a part of the family than you've ever been. I replied, somewhat bitterly, well, that shouldn't be a problem now. Peggy looked puzzled. What do you mean by that? I didn't respond, leaving the question hanging in the air as we continued our drive in silence. The divide between us seemed to grow with every passing mile, reflecting not just the distance in the truck, but also the growing chasm in our perspectives and relationships. I sighed, feeling the weight of recent events. You must have heard by now. I've relinquished the business. It's all Beth's, hers and Fred's, and everyone else's. I've walked away. I'm done carrying everyone else on my shoulders. Peggy's voice quivered as she faced me. What exactly did you do? I stepped down. I'm finished with all of it, I explained, my tone bitter. I poured everything into that business for everyone else. For her, for our family, for this town. I offered great jobs, unmatched benefits, and even supported their families. And this is how I'm repaid. I don't need any of it. You can't just abandon everything. What about the company? What will happen to it without you? She asked, her concern evident. It's not my problem anymore, I said resolutely. I'm done letting my job rule my life. No more sleepless nights over projects, no more worrying about the company's future. Someone else can shoulder those burdens now. Peggy was persistent. You're making a rash decision. You love that company, and you love Beth. You can't just throw all that away. I never loved running the business. My passion was in creating, inventing. Running it was a necessity, not a choice. As for Beth, that's over. I can't stay with someone who betrayed me so deeply, I said, my voice hardening. I get that you're angry, Peggy said, trying to reason with me. But you need time to think this through. Maybe take a trip, clear your head. Don't dismantle everything you've worked for over this. I shook my head. I'm not destroying the company. It's still there, but I'm stepping back. I won't let it consume my life anymore. Let others take the lead. I'm done being the one everyone relies on. With those words, I made it clear that my decision was final. My path had changed, and I was determined to find a new way forward, free from the burdens and betrayals of my past. Peggy remained silent during the drive, but as I pulled up in front of the hotel, she finally spoke up. You're going to let everyone suffer because of her mistake, aren't you? It's not just about punishing her and Fred. You're willing to let everyone else bear the consequences. I'm not actively doing anything, I replied, feeling the weight of her words. This could have been stopped by any of you months ago or even last week. But no one stepped up, no one was willing to side with me. Why should I feel obligated to look out for any of you now? We're still your family, Honor, she pleaded. Not anymore, I said coldly, opening the door. I'm done. Do whatever you need to do. Call someone, get a cab, walk. It doesn't matter to me. You're just going to leave me here? She asked, incredulous. Yes, you knew I would. I've always been clear about my intentions. You're part of the betrayal, just like the rest. You helped wreck my marriage, so don't expect any help from me. We were trying to help, trying to save it, she protested. Well, let's see if you manage the company any better than you did with my marriage, I retorted. Leaving her beside the truck, I walked towards the hotel. I didn't feel particularly good about leaving her stranded, but the numbness of betrayal overshadowed any lingering concern. My comment, do you guys think this OP is heading towards a bright path or not? Comment down below and I will try to finish part 3 ending soon.